Hey everybody, and welcome to Dominion Cards, the video series where we take a strategic, in-depth look at various cards from the board game Dominion. Today we're looking at Transmute. This is a 0 coin and a potion cost action card from Alchemy, and it says, trash a card from your hand. If it's an action card, gain a duchy. Treasure card, gain a transmute. Victory card, gain a gold. So just to clarify, although this is very similar to cards like Ironworks that do different things based on particular types of some other card, if you trash a multi-typed card, you can gain multiple cards from this. So, for example, if you trashed a mill, that's an action and a victory card, and you would gain both a gold and a duchy. And if you trash a card with none of these types, then you gain nothing. Most notably, that's going to be Curse, but there do exist other cards like Knight cards and Hovel. Now let's get straight to the point here. Transmute is a very bad card. In fact, it's widely considered to be one of the worst cards in the game. The latest community ranking puts it as the second worst Kingdom card, just ahead of Philosopher's Stone. But historically, Transmute has actually been in the bottom place back earlier in Dominion's lifetime when the card sets were generally a bit weaker. Philosopher's Stone might have had some use in some sloggy decks, but more often, but even then that might have been just people not playing so well, to be honest. Transmute is very bad. It is correct to ignore Transmute in the vast majority of games in which it shows up in. If you're just not buying Transmute, then good job, you're doing the correct thing. So what is Transmute doing for us? So it trashes cards. But it's worth noting that it doesn't thin your deck because it gains you another card, in much the same way that you're forced to gain another card with Remodel. You have to do that with Transmute as well. But it's a very limited set of cards it can gain you, and all of the cards that it can gain you, so Gold, Duchy and Transmute, they're all stop cards. So Transmute doesn't help your deck work more efficiently, really. It is incredibly slow as a trasher. It's terminal. Trashes only one card at a time, and honestly, the cards that you get from it, they're not even that good. You consider that Remodel, it trashes one card, but you can gain provinces with it. Well, you can't really do that with a Transmute. So let's take a look at each of these three options a little bit more closely. So the most common junk that you're going to have in your deck is copper. And trashing coppers into transmutes is very, very poor option. This is usually much, much worse than just keeping the copper around, because the copper, you can actually play it. That doesn't cost you an action, and it gives you 1 coin, whereas a transmute is this. It's terminal action that you don't really want to play that much necessarily. It's very hard to just play lots of copies of transmute, so you just have this completely useless card in your deck, instead of one that might actually get you a bit of money sometimes. Now, trashing action cards into duchies is fine, really late in the game. You sometimes do this with other cards like Remodel or Alter. They'll trash a card, you can get a duchy from it. But it's worth noting that these other cards, by the time you get to the late game, well, you may actually already have a copy of that card in your deck anyway, because they have other uses, and it's a lot easier to add them to your deck because they don't cost potion. Trashing estates into golds is also okay. There's an option if you could get a copy of Transmute earlier than you actually can. Right? If I could turn an estate into a gold on turn 3, that's actually pretty good. Right? Let's get real. That's a decent improvement to our deck. But I can't get Transmute that quickly. So it's a bit of a rotten deal. It comes very, very late. So that slowness comes from the potion cost. And needing to buy a potion before you can get a copy of Transmute absolutely cripples this card. So different potion cards react differently to the fact that they cost potion. That's just real bad for Transmute. So the problem is that you want to gain trash cards as soon as you possibly can, usually, to improve or remove those weak starting cards. Needing a potion to do this considerably slows down your deck. And the other problem is that because Transmute very easily can gain more copies of itself, because your most common junk in your deck will just gain you more copies of Transmute, it's pretty unlikely that you want to buy multiple copies of Transmute, because you can just gain more copies so easily. So that means your potion's going to be used one time, and then it's just a junk card in your deck. And the worst part is that because potion is a treasure, and the worst part of Transmute is trashing treasures, it's not even very good at cleaning up after itself. So you sort of have to add these 2 stop cards to your deck in order to turn junk into stuff that's not even that great. Like, absolutely terrible. Yes, just really poor. So, okay, so hopefully it's clear from that Transmute is just really bad and really weak and not doing much. So when would we actually get Transmute? Well, sometimes you just happen to have a potion sitting around and you're doing nothing with it. So the classic example is Familiar. You stop buying Familiars pretty soon, and Transmute actually has reason to get rid of curses, right? It can do that for you. So if you ever happen to have another turn where you're not really going to be buying anything, but you've got this potion in your hand, maybe you want to pick up a Transmute and slowly start trashing some curses, right? It's better than nothing, and the cost of getting the Transmute is a lot lower than it would normally be. Outside of this particular use case, usually you're looking for a reason to want to turn coppers into Transmutes in order for it to be actually worth trying to pick up. That's just because, the other ones are sort of limited use. Turning coppers into Transmutes is the thing that's most common that you're going to be able to do with Transmute throughout the game. So if that gets good, then Transmute suddenly is actually decent. So let's take a look at some scenarios or cards that might make us want to do this. So probably the best one is the fact that sometimes it is easier to draw your deck when you have lots of action cards in it, even if you're not actually planning to play those action cards. So Scrying Pool and City Quarter are the 2 examples of this. You much rather have action cards than coppers when these are around, and Transmute's decent at doing that. Sometimes you get to just very easily remove or ignore the Transmutes. So Way of the Horse is the really powerful one in this example. It lets you just play any action card as a laboratory one-shot, and then it leaves your deck forever. Well, turning coppers into one-use laboratories is actually decent. So Transmute gets good with Way of the Horse. Similarly, Way of the Pig, not quite as good, but it lets you essentially ignore Transmute by turning it into a useless do-nothing cantrip. And that's kind of like thinning the coppers, right? You can just play the Transmute and skip past it. So, it's still a bad trasher in that case, but sometimes you will do anything to get rid of some of this junk, and it's kind of like thinning then. So, maybe I'd pick it up. Watchtower is another unusual but possible example in the fact that when you trash a copper and you go to gain the Transmute, you can just throw the Transmute in the trash by having a Watchtower in hand. Now, I'm not saying that this is very good. It's very rare that you might want to do this, but sometimes you will do anything at all to thin your deck, and you can do that with some of these. There are other examples. So, I haven't put it here because it's really bad, but Way of the Tortoise lets you spend another action on the next Transmute and drawing it once to basically stash it away forever, but very, very expensive in order to deal with it then. These are the main things that you will see. That's why I've put these ones in as examples. Lastly, very occasionally, Transmute can help you accumulate a lot of points, notably Vineyard. This is notable because you usually want a potion anyway at some point for Vineyard, so you can get a Transmute, gets you the potion, and then you can start turning the coppers into Transmutes, and it's actually decent points because Vineyard scales up really quickly. There are other ways to get points out of Transmute, so Tomb will just give you points for any sort of trashing whatsoever. Triumphal Arch just wants lots of copies of 2 different types of action card, and maybe you just get a lot of Transmute to this. But you still don't see this very often, just because Transmute is very slow, and what's it really doing? If you are trashing your coppers into Transmutes, then it's like Monument, except worse, right? You're getting a point, you're not even getting the money like you would with Monument. Is that actually very good? Not really. So although I listed these here for completeness, I will say that usually Like, Transmute's such a bad and weak card that I've tried desperately hard to come up with some examples for when you might use it, and honestly, even these are pretty bad. Like, if you just ignore Transmute the vast majority of the time that it shows up, you will basically be playing with it correctly, because Transmute's just that poor of a card. So that's it for Transmute. So what we're going to do now is we're going to head over to the online client. We're going to play some games with Transmute forced in. We're going to see if it's any good. I suspect the answer is no. However, we have a higher proportion of alchemy than we will in any of our other videos. So if it's ever going to be good, like, now is the most likely time that this is probably going to happen. So what do we have here? Well, our only trashing is Transmute, but we're not going to be playing the Transmute, so we don't care. And that's kind of it for Transmute. Well, you know, it can trash the curses, to be fair. You know, there is Witch. However, is the engine actually worth building here? Given that we can't thin the starting junk that we have, the answer's probably no. So what are we doing? We caravan Witch, big money, get an ironworks, get mining villages anyway, because we can with the ironworks. Caravan, just draw and play a bunch of witches. Yeah, maybe. I don't think we're going to be able to do too much with bridge because we can't thin. But yeah, I mean, you're not buying Transmute here. Even though there are curses, it's going to be very difficult to thin them, and because you can't thin the rest of your deck, just thinning the curses on top's not very good. I mean, you still have so much junk, and there's just no real way to draw past it here. Like, what's your draw? Caravan, Witch. You've got Cellar to sift past a bunch of junk, so you don't... I mean, it's okay, but yeah, you don't need Transmute, so you just ignore Transmute here. Like, it's too much investment. You really don't want to spend time. You can Ironworks a potion, so it's a little bit easier, but you don't really want to be wasting time with it. It's not going to do much for you there. Still a weak board, but Witch is too strong, basically. You don't want to take time out when you could be playing a lot of Witch. Here we have Chapel to get thin very quickly. There is also Masquerade. There is also Steward. And then if we ever have anything we want to do with spare action cards, there's Remodel. So why would we ever care about Transmute? All of the junk's going to go very quickly, and we wouldn't even use it for gaining duchies because Remodel's just better. We're probably not remodeling because there's no village here, so I think we Chapel into a minion deck that's also got Mill. It's got Ironworks to pick up Mill. But that sounds about right. There's Lighthouse, maybe, if you don't want to get discard attacked. There is Masquerade, but there's no village, so it's hard to play at the right time. So it's just a minion deck with Mill and Ironworks and Chapel. And you ignore Transmute because there's Chapel, right? So, yeah, so Transmute, it's bad, and you ignore it. Here we have Salvager and Remodel and Transmute as trashing. The only village is Diplomat. Now that's awkward. Because there's Wharf and there's Torturer. How are we getting off our Diplomat? We're only going to get a village from Diplomat if we get an attack played against us, like Torturer. And because there's no other way to play a Torturer chain, what we should do is not play with Torturer, so our opponent can never use Diplomat as a village. And we basically just Wharf big money, I think. Yeah, I think that's it. I can't see any other better use for the buy. Maybe you open with a Salvager to try start trashing the estates, because there's nothing you want to remodel the estates into, and then you just start going Wharf big money, and maybe later on in the game you might be able to salvage something to help end the game more quickly, but it's mostly just Wharf big money with a Salvager, and I think that's it. I think that's all you do. So obviously no Transmute here. Like, you wouldn't even want to like salvage or remodel Transmutes after you turn them into copper, because they're not worth any coins. So it doesn't even give you fuel for other junk. What a terrible card. What's going on here? So we do have Scrying Pool. That means technically we could turn all of the copper into action cards. But there's a problem with this deck here, and that is that there is no village. And so you know, we can draw up with Scrying Pool, but then so what, right? Like, we could play the Transmute, but if we were going to have a deck that drew all the way, like you would rather be playing something like Outpost, probably. So what do we do here? So minions no good with no real thinning. There's your opponent's pirate ships to get thin, but I don't like the sound of that. I mean, that certainly kills like Philosopher's Stone, but you weren't really going to be doing Philosopher's Stone anyway. I mean, there is Moat, but you're not exactly going to go like Moat Philosopher's Stone. That would be ridiculous. It's Duke. It's got to be Duke then, because there's nothing else going on this board. So, does Pirate Ship kill a Duchy Duke deck? How else are we getting money? Let's say we start buying a bunch of Duchies and then our opponent goes hard in on Pirate Ship. Could they actually stop us from buying Dukes at some point? I mean, maybe, but it will be very, very slow. And I'm not sure that's actually any good. We certainly wouldn't be able to play a load of poachers. There is Minion as an alternate money source. You couldn't run a Duchy Duke deck with a lot of minions, but you could go for a province deck. But there's no trashing, really. Like, it's so weak, but the thing is, I couldn't really do Transmute Scrying Pool. It took me a very long time. But it would... Well, it wouldn't even safely get me a province every turn, because I have 3 golds if I trash like my estates, but then what if they get pirate shipped, right? Am I doomed? Wow, this board is so weak. I honestly don't know what to do in it. I haven't got a clue. Like, what do you do? What's good? Is pirate ship actually good? I think this is a board where pirate ship is good. I think pirate ship kills anything else. Yeah, there's Moat, but like you can't really buy enough moats. I think you just go all in on pirate ship, I guess, right? Like, and then what? Some poachers? Like, man, weird board. But I think that's what I do. I open silver and pirate ship. Oh man, and then your opponent can't Duchy Duke. Yeah, but I guess the problem is if you thin a lot of their coppers, they can start buying Minion, and then they might be able to do a Minion deck that also uses Outpost, and then they will catch up really quickly. So, like, you can't even do that, right? Like, you thin their coppers, that's great for their Minion deck. So I guess instead... I can't believe I was just thinking in my mind, what about Minion, bigger money? Oh no, it's awful. What do you do here? Wow, I actually don't know. I have no idea how to play this board. But one thing is for certain, and that is that you are not buying Transmute. Well, isn't this funny? What a kingdom. Yeah, I just open silver and poacher, and then I have to see what my opponent does. If they... Okay, so maybe that's it. Maybe it's counterplays against your opponent. So maybe... So if you buy pirate ship, they can go Minion. If you go Duchies, they can go pirate ship. If you go Transmute Scrying Pool, why? Like, you open potion... Well, actually, you can just kill their potion with pirate ship, so like maybe they can't even do that very well. And then you can, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Big money with Caravan, maybe. Like, maybe that's it. Maybe it's just Caravan, big money. Does that die to pirate ship? Probably. I guess it is just pirate ship then. It's just pirate ship money. And... you can probably use that in your own minion deck. So maybe you do that and you try and also buy some minions if your opponent tries to counteract with minions so that they can't get a deck flooded with minions. I think you have to go minion and pirate ship just to kill all of the counters, which is a very unorthodox deck. But at least you can consistently attack and potentially buy things as well, like some poachers and stuff. And caravans, so like maybe it's not the worst thing ever. Yeah, I guess that's what I do. Anyway, there's no Transmute, but wow. What a board. Oh, it's so awful. Terrible kingdom there. Gosh. Right, here comes the last one. So what do we have? Oh, we have a village at last. Actually, I think the first game had a village. We have Shantytown as the village. So it's a terrible village, but we do have one. And we have got library for draw. We've got lurker. We've got sentry to thin. We've got bridge. And there's even like treasure map. There is a pirate ship and a lighthouse, so I don't think we need to bother with lighthouse because, you know, who's buying pirate ship here? We get to sentry away all of our coppers. I would like to go Shantytown, library, bridge. Probably won't have enough villages to do all that much with bridge, so I might get some treasure maps at some point just to supplement it with a bit of money, and then we go for provinces. I don't think Duke is going to be viable here. This doesn't seem bad enough to go for Duchy Duke. I think a sentry with like, maybe you don't even need lurker because you got bridge, right? So I don't bother with lurker. I think the bridge thing will do better than like Duchy Duke. So if your opponent goes Duchy Duke, you do get to actually play like all the bridges, and that's very good. And you'll be able to, your deck will very suddenly like kick off and you'll do very well. Anyway, yeah, so no Transmute here. So that was 0 out of 5 for Transmute, which is exactly what I expected. I thought about it in the game with Scrying Pool, and if there was a decent engine there, then you know what? Probably I might even have got it, but no, it's just really bad. So there you go. Transmute, don't buy it. It's terrible. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.